So I started on November 1st. I'm so happy to be here. I love this company. I love the mission. Um, I love being part of the StepStone family, but also part of the Axel Springer family, and that's amazing. And then just also, so you know, I'm very active in the startup and scale up community. I sit on a few boards, and I'm very active in the angel investing community. So it's a wonderful world to be in. I live in London. I've been here for 6 years with my wonderful husband, Chris, who tolerates all of my weirdness and plays tennis with me too. And yes, we have wonderful Molly, which is, as pointed out, this crazy little painting that I did, which we can have a chat about my poor artistic skills at some point if you'd like. But the more important question is, how do we get here? How does a nerd who wears jeans and a baseball cap every day, who comes from this crazy background, end up in a place where I am today? So it's been a 25-year plus journey. And I want to tell you a little bit about it, and then a little bit about maybe hopefully some interesting things and lessons learned that are there. I'm going to try not to cover the things that you've probably heard from other folks, but we'll see how that goes. So I was, as Guz just said, we were born into a Navy brat family. So I was the child of a Navy officer. We lived a variety of places that gave me maybe some fearlessness around meeting people. But I also had this great dad who was into that. And then my mother, who was a mathematician and a physicist, and she taught school, and she went back and got her PhD in maths, and so really, gave me a love of technology and engineering. So it was like a fairly crazy household, which was awesome. It made me very curious. I live with that insane and intense curiosity even today. I think that that's one of the things that has made me happy to grow in my career, and it also it makes me not fearful of being unconventional. I'm an unconventional person, and you'll see that that's been something that's been interesting in my world over my career. And if you think about unconventionality, so I went to University of Illinois, which is a fantastic university, but like most CTOs, or very unlike most CTOs, I have a degree in anthropology with a focus on Mesoamerican archaeology, like most CTOs, but also in math. Right. So I love math, and that is really powerful and wonderful. And I love computers, and I've really always been into coding and computing. But I can't help myself. I love digging up pottery, and I think it's really cool to think about archaeology. But there you have it. So I did that. I also, when I finished university, spent a lot of time in data. I worked for several social science research houses and science research houses. University of Oxford, the Center for Criminological Research, University of Illinois, Center for Prevention Research and Development, and at the University of Minnesota with the epidemiology department on a cancer research house. And I learned there that that data is super powerful. This is really when data became part of an interesting world, and it became programmatic. So I was doing a lot of programmatic data work, statistical work, and started to see how you can tie big data sets into coding and programming, and that was very cool. And so that's a really deep part of my world, which is hypothesis-driven decision-making and thinking about data and how you can affect change. I realized that when I was doing that I really actually kind of dug the coding part of it a lot. So I started with a company called Retech back in the day in 1996 as employee 13. We built retail software, and I came on to build software. And I was blessed with an incredible career there, 10 years, where we grew from employee 13. We got bought, we got sold, we bought companies, we went public, and then ultimately we got bought by this tiny little company out in Silicon Valley called Oracle, whereas I became employee 50,013. And that was incredible. And I want to spend a little time on that because I think it was super formative in my career. I was able to come in as an engineer and do technical things. I built some pretty cool software. I really spent time looking at how you help a company that's scaling and growing, and how do you build those skills and take the technical problem solving skills and now start to translate them into systems design, translate them into team development, and realize that solving problems at scale means that you have to take on a leadership quality. And that leadership quality is really solving problems people problems. And those people, team, scaling problems, for me anyway, are just as interesting as technical problems. And that's one of the lessons that I learned. If those things aren't interesting to you, then you need to think about whether or not you really want to be in management or leadership. But leadership and management means that you have some deep skill, me, technology, engineering, but you also need to broaden that skill to recognize that getting people to build things at scale, to help companies at higher and higher scale, means that you've got to understand the social psychology problems, the team dynamics, and getting people to work like that. Anyway, it was amazing. Retech was also amazing because it was such a high volume, fast growing company. I learned another massive and important lesson, which is you don't need to just go up. I think we all go through a world where we think about our careers as me plus one. I call it the me plus one era. I'm an engineer. I want to be a senior engineer. I'm a senior engineer. I want to be an architect. I'm an architect. I want to be a senior architect. I'm a manager. I want to be a senior manager. You get it. That is iterating your way to nowhere. Figure out what you want to do. You may not know it right away, but put some destination in place. Put something ahead of yourself that's a goal that you want to get to, or a North Star. That might change over time, but that helps you realize that you don't have to do the me plus one. Sometimes you can move laterally. Sometimes you can take on different scope. And for me, I realized I wanted to be a CTO at the time. And so what did that mean? That meant that I wanted to learn more about software when I was at that company. I didn't just have to do more and more technical problems. I took on a job as a technical product manager. I took on a job to lead our architecture group. I took on a job to drive our technical product strategy. And those helped me learn more about software, team development, outcome orientation. By doing that and broadening my expectations around how I could learn and grow, those were amazing. So I really want to emphasize that, because I think that made me realize that the unconventionality of not just thinking it's a stepwise ladder, but it's a meandering trail to that fantastic destination that you want to get to, that you're going to learn a lot of things with. It was wonderful, and those 10 years were incredible, and I did learn a lot. I learned a pile. One of the things I learned as well was when we got bought by Oracle, that it wasn't exactly the same company that was there. And you have to be in it to win it. You have to understand and believe in the outcome of the company. And I couldn't quite get there. It was a weird thing. It was maybe a little bit of immaturity on my part, but I realized that, you know what, I wanted to go and test my skills other places. And when I did that, when I had that realization, it was talking with other people that I realized, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what I have learned and done in the last 10 years. You don't know that because you focus on yourself, or you focus inwardly. Get a little step back, a little perspective, and you can realize what an incredible opportunity of things that you're learning over time. So I love that. So I wanted to spend a little more time on Retech because I think those were so formative, and I had great mentors like many people have. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but do find those mentors. I think that's great. I had a wonderful opportunity to really look at going into some incredible brands over time. I worked for Travelocity. I came in to build the merchandising and data warehousing group, and I was there for a long time and ended up running all of our front office. And so that was all of our global platforms and teams, and how users came into the online travel marketplace. And at that point, I really had the opportunity to build and work with bigger and bigger teams. So I learned a lot about distributed development. I had teams in Dallas and New York, and London and Bangalore and Buenos Aires and Sydney and Krakow. And I'm probably missing some. I didn't sleep. That's what I learned. I learned a lot of things, but I also learned that it was important to meet people where they were, right? So I would be at a 10 o'clock call with the Bangalore team. It was important that they didn't have to just necessarily adjust to my timeline, but I could also adjust to them. And finding ways to really connect with teams, and finding great ways to delegate to great leaders across the globe is the way that you can scale. And that was super important. When I left Travelocity, I kind of upped the game on the brand side. I went to Disney. And I was at Disney as the CTO for the online group. So what an incredible opportunity to work with a worldwide brand, a global brand, so enriched and entrenched in innovation and in so many different ways. It was really remarkable. And what was amazing for me was to go into not the e-commerce world or the retail world, but to go into games and media and content, and to realize how important branded user experiences are for any company that you're actually going to build. And I had a wonderful learning experience there. I also learned about the complexity of doing things for kids and high regulation, the importance of brand preservation and brand experience, and how important it is, if you've got that great brand, that you do everything you can to protect the value that it brings. There was an incredible opportunity there. But also I got to build games, and that was so cool. We built massive multiplayer games, but for kids. How cool is that? Club Penguin, Pixie Hollow, Cars, Pirates of the Caribbean. And it was wonderful. And you start to realize, how big, massive networked applications work. And that was a great opportunity for me. So I learned a lot there. I also learned maybe some of the downside challenges of big companies. They have real momentum. Sometimes it's hard to fight against some of that momentum or change things or be transformational. And so it's making sure you pace yourself and understand the ways that you can actually make a difference. But Disney was amazing for that. My next step in my career took me from California to Boston, where I was the CTO of a company called Rue La La. And Rue La La was an e-commerce company that built fashion retail. So it was high quality luxury fashion retail. And so, says the woman with the baseball cap and the jeans that she wears every day, do I really fit? I remember talking to the folks there and said, I want you to know I wear jeans and a baseball cap every day. And they said, that's okay. We know we'll have to compromise. And what was funny about that, though, was that it was funny, but they meant it in a good way. I could be my authentic self, even though so many people were drawn to that company because they loved the fashion experience. For me, not really the big piece of it. I was drawn there for the ability to make transformation and change and to help a company grow. And that company was fine with me being myself. And I learned, don't go someplace where you can't be yourself. Don't do something where you can't authentically be you, whatever that is. And that was a super important thing for me. And I live by that every single day. And so when I was at Rue, it was wonderful. It was an opportunity to again, grow my skills. I had done a lot of technology. I'd done some work in product. I'd done a lot of work in Agile. I was expanding my world here to take on a bigger role, more operations, more warehousing, back-end, logistics, infrastructure. But also here, I learned a love for product at a global or a company level. I learned that product thinking, not just Agile thinking, but thinking about outcomes, building in that scientific hypothesis, but driving to outcomes at a product level was something that was super important. And so I started to build a product organization there and had a great opportunity. While we were there, we grew, we tripled in size, and essentially grew the company really substantially based on the work that, obviously we were able to do technically, infrastructure, operationally, and product-wise, but also because we were all very clear on the mission that we were trying to drive for the company. And how amazing is that? So that was great. My next stop in my journey, it was London. So I actually moved to London about 6 years ago. I joined a company called Zeal. We were building e-commerce. We were in the lottery space, very global company. And I joined because I had an opportunity to do something I hadn't done. So yes, it was the CTO, but I got to sit on an executive board. So now I've gone from an engineer to a team leader to a digital or a technology executive to running a department to now adding in product to adding in operations. Now I'm thinking at a company level. How cool is that? You can actually make a difference at a full-on company level, and that's just amazing. So I sat on an executive board with the CEO and the CFO, and we built incredible opportunities, grew the company, and then worked it into a transaction. So actually shaped the company, set it up for an exit, did the exit, and it was amazing. Again, such an opportunity for me to be a GM, to be a technology lead, to run product. And then here I also took on global HR. And that was amazing, because how do you think about growing a company and building culture and doing those kinds of things? And each one of these things are interesting to me because many of them I had never done before, right? But why not? I'm game. Let's figure it out. Let's be honest about what you know and what you don't know, work with incredible people, and then figure out how do you make a difference. And so I wanted to be unconventional. I was. I wanted to be fearless, and I was. And but mostly I also wanted to be humble because I don't know how to do these things. And so we have to learn and we figure these things out together and be very outcome oriented. Finally, I went to IKEA. I had not anticipated that, but they wanted me to come and help and build their team. And I think working at IKEA was an amazing opportunity to start the digital transformation of the whole company. So we built in product and technology. We were able to hire in incredible people. I feel very, very good about that. But here's another place where I was frankly not, I mean, I was not perfect for this role, not by any means. And I was talking in the interview process with the CEO, Jesper Brodin, and he was asking me what I was excited about or what I was worried about. And I said, here's the deal. I've never run a 4,000 person team before. I've never been that kind of scale of leadership. And if that worries you or scares you, we should talk about it now, because here's the deal. I'm going to need your help. I need you to help me be successful in this role. And what was great was we had a conversation about how do you make sure that you build and scale? How do you ask for help? How do you make sure that you've got the right processes in place? And being open and honest about, you know, the good things that I do and the opportunities that I brought, but also the challenges that were there and being open to that. So now that brings me obviously to StepStone. I'm super excited to be here, but maybe one more quick thing to talk about, which is my interest in scale-ups and startups. When I moved to London, I promised myself I would get very involved in that. I would really start to work in that community because it gives me joy. Because I could actually work with these wonderful teams, these entrepreneurs, and bring whatever experience and relevance that I have and into the world. And I can actually, shockingly, I actually seem to add some value and people like it. And we talk about product market fit and scaling teams and hiring engineers. And I love that. And everything that I can bring into that equation is wonderful. And what I get in return is just such inspiration and joy. And I find that to be one of those things where the well can't just be a one way. You can't just have information coming in or going out. You've got to make sure that it's a healthy world where that happens. And so that's my world too. So that explains my world. And I thought we have a few more minutes. I wanted to talk about a couple of the biggest lessons. So the biggest lessons for me, flexibility and openness. We talked about the Me+1 and being able to expand your horizon. Make sure that you understand that end goal. Sometimes it's a circuitous journey. For me, also the ability to move was important. Understand your risk profile. For me, I was able to move. That opened up a whole bunch of different things for me. That changed the game. So I was able to go to California and Boston and London. Not everybody can do that. But to think about where are you settled in yourself, or maybe you're not taking that risk, even just changing the things that you learn or the people that you interact with, whatever those things are. So for me, flexibility was a big one. The second one was imposter syndrome. Everyone, unless you're a malignant narcissist, has imposter syndrome. Get over it. Now, I say that in particular to this group of women. Women have imposter syndrome. Everyone has imposter syndrome. Get over it. You're not perfect. You are not the perfect fit for the mold. And what you need to do is embrace that and figure out where unconventionality actually is to your advantage. Don't be stopped by a lack of a perfect fit. I haven't, and that's been a massive opportunity for me. And you have to be uncomfortable with discomfort there. And and if you can embrace that comfort with discomfort, that will be a magical, it can be, and it will be a magical thing for you. Learn to ask for help. Again, there's a really interesting world where we think when we're growing our career that we have to own it all and we need to know all the answers, and we're afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Structure it in a constructive way. Ask for that help. I had a boss once where I remember I'd completely taken on way too much. I called him about 10 o'clock at night and I'm like, I can't do it. And he said, I was waiting for this call. I was waiting for it. And it was a remarkable opportunity to realize that he didn't think it was a weakness in me. And I give that advice to young leaders all the time. It is not a weakness to ask for help. In fact, that's the biggest chasm that you've got to cross at some point in leadership. It will limit you in a career if you don't figure out how to ask for and talk about help and collaborate. And I think that that's super, super big and important. That ties into another one, which is when you think about leadership, for you as you're growing in leadership, you need to think not just down to your team, the things that you own, not just up to your boss, because we're all pretty good at managing our bosses, frankly, but how do you think out? How do you make sure that you're collaborating and partnering with your peers and with your people across into different functions? I had a really interesting experience when I was at Travelocity. I got a 360 feedback that, let's just say, was not the most flattering. And it was a call to action to realize I had been so focused on delivering my team, managing down and managing up, I had missed my opportunity to partner with my colleagues and my peers. And I made a massive effort on fixing that. That was super important to me. And so I encourage you all to do that. Sometimes those 360s are great wake-up calls for that. Just a couple more. I think feedback is a gift. Embrace that. So when I say feedback's a gift, I love building feedback cultures. I love small little tools like stop, start, continue. They can be nice ways to break the ice. Giving feedback, giving constructive feedback in the moment frequently will build trust if you also take feedback. Getting feedback is a gift. Use it. Listen to it. Really think about that. And I've had a wonderful opportunity to build that skill. It's a muscle. You got to build that muscle and you got to work with it. And when you do that, that means that you build this trust environment where you can actually share and you can be constructive and you can make those changes. And then I think just two very quick ones. One is lift your head up. There's inspiration everywhere. I love my my startup and my scale up community. Just as a little example, I do a lot of work here in London, but I dabbled a little bit when I was in Boston, and I met a guy when I was playing tennis. We were playing tennis. He was a really nice kid right out of Boston College or Boston University. And he and his buddies had this great startup idea. And so we worked back and forth, and he thought it was neat that I was a CTO. So we've shared things back and forth over the years. They pivoted. They did some pretty interesting things. Well, that company is called Drizzly, and they just got bought by Uber for 1.1 billion this year, just this last 2 weeks, I think. I wrote him a little note. I'm like, Justin, I don't know how the serve is going, but the company seems to be doing pretty well. So that's the lift your head up, make those connections, network. These are really, really interesting things. And then finally, and I know we're probably going to go to the Q&A pretty quickly, but one of the things I also learned is, as a woman in technology, and woman in technology leadership, in technology executive, in corporate executive, sitting on a board in tech, that many times I'm seen to be a unicorn, and that has to stop. I don't want that to be the case. I don't want to be unique, but yet there's a role model here, right? So there's a role model. So making sure that you're lifting people up, giving women a chance and doing that. And I'll say that comes to bear in a variety of different areas. One is being open to conversations and being a good mentor, but also sometimes you got to push real hard. So in the recruiting area, as an example, don't accept laziness, and I'll say laziness, but don't accept the comment that there aren't women in a field or an area. They are there. Now, maybe they're not easy to see. Maybe they're hiding behind something, or they have a slightly different title. We have every opportunity to find more women. I sat on a panel once where somebody said, there are no women technologists. BS. Go work a little bit harder. You can do that. And we, particularly if you're in a leadership position, have an opportunity to expose pipelines and to make sure that we give people a chance when they are unconventional. Remember that unconventionality becomes a theme, and we can help make sure that those conscious and unconscious bias of what an engineer looks like, what a technology executive looks like, what an architect looks like, what a board member looks like. We can change that by pushing the boundaries, not just of our own selves, but also the unconventionality of those situations, and then essentially making those things come to light so that they can be more conventional.